another buzz. Black Lives Matter. Okay, so not just a Black Lives Matter, and I'm loving this panel, right? You've got myself, okay, black. You know, you've got Nick, who's white. You've got Sam, you know, who's mixed heritage, right? Okay.
Still a black woman.
Still a black woman, right? Okay. So these are things you've got to think about. So all of a sudden now we've got COVID. So we've got this going on. The corona's going on in the background, and then we've got the Black Lives Matter. Okay. We're now at a point where race has reared its head again. Okay. Yeah. And you know, my consideration for it is saying, okay, fine, like it's really weird, and I had to try and think about this and trying to put it into terms that people can understand. And I will say this: the chances of Nicky being called, okay, a honky, a redneck, the chance of that happening to Nicky in the next decade, may get called it 2 or 3 times.
Have you ever been called it?
Right? Never been called it.
Have you ever been called anything like that?
No, I will. I mean, maybe, but them kind of things just. I don't really get insulted like that.
It's not so often enough that it feels that it insults.
No, I wouldn't think I had anyway. Like, to be fair,
and that's a big thing, right? That it's not a bad thing, but it's interesting that we're saying, okay, actually, do you know what? I haven't. Yeah. I've never experienced it, right? Which is fine, and it's not wrong.
Yeah, 100%.
Okay?
I'm glad
it's not wrong.
To be fair,
right? The bit we're faced with is saying, okay, fine. The fact that we're now 2020, where I think that I will be called a nigger.
Yeah.
More likely now than if I would have been called a nigger in 2000, and that's really weird. In the space of 20 years, we've instead of progressing 20 years and then some, I find we've regressed.
Yeah, 100%.
So when you're seeing things about Black Lives Matter, and I want to get your view, you know, actually your views on this, guys, for the Black Lives Matter, you know, when we're talking about, I know, and I don't want to be political, but it's when people make reference to, i.e., some people may have, you know, refer to immigrants. You know, what's an immigrant? My parent was an immigrant 56 years ago, right? My parents were. So, you know, it'd be interesting to get your thoughts on that. Now, you know, I know, Sam, you did a lot of work with Black Lives Matter. You know, I remember one of our first meetings.
Not affiliated, by the way, with any Black Lives Matter groups. I'm not. In fact, I started my own group, which was the Black Progressive Movement, because of all the negative that was coming out of Black Lives Matter. I felt like the Black Lives Matter had been hijacked by young people that hadn't really established a voice, who hadn't necessarily spoken to the elders in the community, who didn't necessarily have all they wanted to do was defund the police and get rid of the history. And I didn't think it was an appropriate way of dealing with things. So my quarantine has been different. Like, for me, it was a complete opposite to some of you guys in regards to their mental health. And I'll only go over it quickly because we are moving into Black Lives Matter. But for me, with my own mental health, I'm actually used to being indoors. I have Asperger's, which means I have very high levels of anxiety around groups of people. And I actually live in a very, very busy Waterloo. We get over 30 million visitors a year, and we get 1 million every day in for work. So it's a really congested area. So I usually stay in my house and don't go out. Whereas quarantine allowed me to come out more. And I also work, so I was buying boxes of veg and fruit and giving it out to my neighbours where they couldn't get any food. I've got a lot of elderly, I've got a lot of those with mental health. And then Black Lives Matter happened. And it hit me. Because the thing is, I'm not a celebrity, but I've got a big following on Twitter. So I'm usually a target for racists anyway. And it was coming out of the woodwork like nobody's business. And it was the hardest thing to have to relive it again in regards to what's happening with Black Lives Matter, and learn it. Sometimes some of us were learning that some of our friends weren't necessarily our friends. Do you know what I mean? Like, that was the hardest thing, having to block some of these people that I may have known for a good few years, just because we find out that they weren't willing to be understanding, they weren't willing to be empathetic. The only thing they wanted to concentrate on is, yeah, but you're not getting murdered here. And it's actually, we are not in the same rate. Obviously, we deal with more police brutality, which means we get to walk away from it, but we still deal with something. Do you know what I mean? We're still the ones that are being expelled in school for our natural hair. We're still the ones that are more likely to get stopped by the police. Even if we're middle class, which should take us out of that. Middle class, middle-aged, black man driving down the road is still just as likely to get stopped by the police, more likely than anybody else. So even if we are middle class and move out of that, we never get to walk away from other people's views about us. Sorry, I was going to go on to what, like the idol.
No, please.
I was going to say, so with what I did, is I went to every single march, and this is, you know, I do have asthma, but I still wore my mask because I wanted to be responsible. There was people out there giving out PPE and free masks and hand sanitizer, but what pissed me off the most was all we was doing was marching. There was no direction of what we was trying to achieve, and that's how it felt. So I turned round after my daughter was asked to do a speech on Windrush at one of these marches, and I ended up doing all the research. Now, I've got to tell you, I learnt some stuff that I didn't even know about the situation, and I was so incensed. I started a charity.
Okay.
So I started a free legal charity. It's now the biggest legal charity in the UK, and I've done that in 2 months.
Fantastic. I mean, and it's great, Sam. I know, you know, a bit of background, okay? So I know myself and Sam, we were in a similar sort of peer group, and when the first Black Lives Matter issue came out, I remember saying, you know, on my Facebook page, I was putting topics out because I want to get people talking, and me and Sam fell out. And me and Sam,
for about 5 minutes.
We fell out, but I get it, and people are saying, "Oh, Sam!" I said, "But no, do you know what? This is unlike Sam." Yeah. So when we spoke about it, and again, it's part of my learning as well. I'm quite fiery. I don't know I'm fiery. I get it, but it's part of my learning where I was actually able to take a step back and say, "Hang on, do you know what? This isn't quite like Sam." So, you know, let the dust settle. And he spoke the next day, and bam, and actually Sam actually came back, and I've got such respect for you. And he apologised to me online. A lot of people will just apologise on a DM, a little text message, but you actually apologise online.
Yeah, well, if I'm going to insult you online, I'm going to apologise there so everyone can see it.
Yeah,
I'm not
it was a big thing for me, and for me it was a step forward in terms of how people could sort of see us, right? Because it was a case where we're saying actually, well, we've got two people arguing, we've got two black people arguing. But it wasn't. It was a case where, and it didn't become really stubborn. We actually just spoke, we discussed it, and okay, fine. Which was great. Yeah. You know, equally, you know, it's been things where I remember myself and Nick, we were in Hong Kong 2 years ago, and it was really weird because we both experienced being a minority in Hong Kong, right? We went from generally being in a cosmopolitan surrounding to crazy. I might see a black person for 2 or 3 days. Nick might see a person we stay with. We might see a white person. We didn't train. Yeah. If we didn't go to one of the training academies.
So you were both minorities.
Yeah.
I'm wondering if we'd been stared at so much if it was just me. You know? It was fun actually. I felt like, you know, I was a superstar. I was walking around with Stuart, and we had a lot of attention. Yeah, and we did see like 2 other black people, I think, in 2 weeks. So
yeah.
Not bad.
Yeah. No. But it was just really weird as we. And the experiences, I mean, fantastic. It was, you know, myself and Nick, you know, I said, you know, in jiu-jitsu we started 6 weeks apart, 6 weeks apart, and we've actually discussed how, on many occasions, how jiu-jitsu has actually brought. We're just a band of brothers, and I'm telling you now, you walk into the middle of the dojo and say, right, I need a plumber. I'm a plumber. I need a tutor. I'm a tutor. We are such a random band of brothers, but the way we come together. So the only colour we see in jiu-jitsu really, like
black belt.
Colour of our belts. It really is our belts, 100%.
Right?
But
I can second that through karate.
Yeah, it's crazy because, you know, even when we do our sort of social events and we go out for a meal or a drink, whatever, and we look around, and I guarantee at least once, more than once during the night, myself, Nick, you know, the other instructors will sort of step back and we can just survey. I mean, not like some proud files, but we just survey and say, man, like, those 2 guys over there, look at that. They've come so far and would have done this. When he first walked in, didn't think he would last. But there are people out there who constantly prove us wrong. Yeah. Okay? And the fact of the matter is that the great thing, because they prove us wrong, we have to have that open mind. So if we can have an open mind in jiu-jitsu, then why can't society adopt a similar thing? I'm not saying everybody's taking jiu-jitsu.
Society needs to all train jiu-jitsu.
Yeah. You know,
It'd be good, wouldn't it?
Yeah. But it's that mindset of being so, okay, fine. Look, you know, how do we change this perception? And it's strange, right? You know, myself and Nick, so we've been away a number of times now, and we kind of get it. You know, we get it in terms of what we're trying to achieve from a jiu-jitsu standpoint, but equally over the last couple of months, we've been locked down, we've spoken far more openly about how we're feeling, and also how race has been, and so on and so forth. Like there's been a change, and in fact, I think our relationship has become has grown from it. It's become stronger. There are subjects which are quite taboo that we couldn't, we didn't really discuss before. Not we couldn't, we didn't really. But now they're actually being openly discussed.
Yeah, I think because of what's going on, I think I've never even, like, before jiu-jitsu, obviously, I started falling out of love with football when I started jiu-jitsu, but obviously I was a Chelsea fan, and Chelsea fans, you know, Chelsea had a lot of black players at the time, and some of the language you would hear if Hasselbank had a bad day, and he had a good day, he's a king, he has a bad day, he's a black so-and-so. So I grew up in that kind of environment, and I was always scratching my head as to how 1 week you're racist and 1 week, like, you're their best friend. So I was always a confused kid, you know, I never really understood it. And when I got into jiu-jitsu, race and class goes out the window,
yes,
you know. So I suspect over the last 12 years, it doesn't even cross my mind. I don't really put much thought into it, you know. And as I said, I haven't had compassion for the whole people having like the kind of, you know, the drama from the police and stuff like that. Because to me, it doesn't matter, and I don't watch the news and stuff like that. But obviously the last 5 months we've been taken out of our little sanctuary, our church, where class and race doesn't matter, and obviously I think the whole race has come to the forefront now, you know, and I think a lot of things are being exposed. So I think, yeah, we have had more discussions over the last few months. I'm open to discussing it now, whereas before I'm just like, what are you talking about? Like, it's just, you know, it's a bit tunnel vision sometimes when you're in jiu-jitsu, you know. It's a great place to be, but also I think jiu-jitsu can shut you off from actually what's going on outside, you know. Yeah. There's a lot of stuff going outside in the world, I think, hopefully on the way to mending.